Namaste everyone. Pregnancy is a joy and a wonderful time in the life of a woman. Pregnancy is such a time where couple have to spend each and every time and they enjoy each and every moment of it. But unfortunately, pregnant women and that couple are overloaded with various misconceptions, myths and falsified information saying on the name of cultural influences or traditional practices. As and when a woman becomes pregnant, everybody at home turns out to be a doctor giving out all the free advices, which most of them tend to be a myth or a misconception or a superstition. So, to know more about what is right and what is wrong, what is myth and fact about the traditional practices or the cultural influences that are imposed on the pregnancy, we have Dr. Shilpi Reddy, who is a consultant and head department of gynecology and obstetrics at KIMS Cuddles, Hyderabad. Hello, doctor. Doctor, we see as and when a female becomes pregnant, everybody at home turns out to be a doctor.
Yes.
Parents, grandparents, family, friends, relatives,
They talk
everybody.
out of their experience.
Yes. So, out of which, there can be certain facts, there can be certain myths. And mostly we see all the traditional practices being imposed on the women.
Yes, correct.
Leaving about her own mental well-being. So today let's discuss something on such myths and facts about what practices are being imposed on women. So the very first or the very common myth that we generally see at homes is, you are now pregnant and you should eat for two. One is for you and the baby. How far is this right?
This is absolutely not right in the current situation of increasing gestational diabetes and increasing the age of getting diabetes is just becoming low every generation. Yes. So what used to happen in the past is women used to get pregnant when they were say 35, 40 or 45 kgs. That was in the late teens or early teens or before 20 years. So that was when their body used to grow, especially in teenage, and the weight was very less. They used to be petite and thin. So at that point of time, they used to feed them more because they were in their growth spurt, their growth curve. BMI was quite less, and also an additional load of pregnancy.
Yes.
So that was the situation then. Now that we are seeing pregnancies after 25, after 28, after 32, with BMIs of 25 to 30 to 35 and 40, yes. None of our pregnant women are less than 50 kgs. Mostly we see pregnancies in the weight range of 60 and 80 kgs. So they are all well nourished with good fat reserves and healthy in terms of weight. Their BMIs are all good. So in such situations, we advise weight gain to a limited extent only. For somebody in the normal BMI range, say 23, 24, 25 or 26, less than 10 kgs. For somebody in a BMI somewhere 30, less than 7 kgs. For somebody with a BMI more than 30, 35, less than 5 kgs. So it all depends on how you are when you get pregnant. Nobody is supposed to eat for two persons. That is a myth. During pregnancy, additional calorie requirements by the baby is only 300 per day. 300 calories is one proper milk glass with some protein powder. That's it. Or an egg or 2 eggs or something very minuscule. Not too much. 300 calories is very petite in size as a food portion you consider. And when you are breastfeeding mothers, around 450 calories extra per day. What people are not doing is they should take extra intake of protein. They are just keeping a blind eye towards protein and increasing carbohydrates, which is again giving a lot of tendency of weight gain and increasing the tendency of gestational diabetes, increasing the sugar exposure inside the baby. That is going to again impact early obesity in the children and early diabetes in their life. So definitely don't eat for two people. Eat nutritious, eat good protein source, at least 1 gram per kg body weight, and an additional few grams, like at least 20 grams for the baby. So that protein intake will help you in the long run. Not carbs. Carbs definitely you should take, but not more than 40 or 50% in your meal.
Yes.
Fat is also good, provided it is taken in a limited quantity.
So it means having a balanced diet
Yes.
as per the condition of the pregnancy requirements with good amount of protein is
Yes.
all very important. And
Very important, and diet is another level of medicine.
yes.
So as you give importance to your obstetrician, with your BMI, with your social diet, with your nutritional status, with your anemia or no anemia condition, with your more protein or less protein intake, whatever said and done, a dietitian should be together with you till you deliver and after you deliver till you stop your breastfeeding. So that should be your association with your obstetrician and the dietitian simultaneously, hand in hand.
Right. So having good food is ultimately important, and there's no fact in having food for two people, especially
Yes.
during pregnancy. Thank you so much, doctor. And doctor, earlier we used to see in olden days a female, despite being pregnant, till her last trimester, she used to attend her fields,
Yes.
and she used to regularly carry out her household
Yes.
works and everything,
Yes.
carrying all weights and everything. But in the recent generations, in the recent times, we see that, oh, you're pregnant, don't step out of the bed, don't walk out, don't work. So this is what we generally keep hearing about. So how far or how likely is this safe and on the weight of the mother?
Definitely, every pregnant woman has to continue her daily course. That's very, very important in terms of mobilizing your body, your joints, your muscles, your growth, your activities. You have to be at par with your previous nature and behavior. If you are a good working person, physically fit, physically working, physically taking care of your daily course, it might be cooking or washing clothes or washing utensils or anything, daily field work, or you're a manual laborer, anything said and done which you're doing on a daily basis can be continued during pregnancy. And the more amount of work that you do while sitting or squatting or all these things increase the chance of having a normal labor, which is not happening these days because you have shifted from a groundwork job to a desk job. So wherein your pelvis is not opening. You have shifted from an Indian toilet to a Western toilet wherein your pelvis is not opening. You have shifted from field work to computer works wherein you are not able to open up the pelvis, and that is one likely reason why people are having a lot of cesarean rates. To break that chain, we are including yoga and prenatal exercises in which we concentrate on such things so that the pelvis opens up, and we advise them to do all these daily chores and activities which will eventually help them have a easy normal delivery.
Right. So caring is required, but definitely not over caring in terms of
Absolutely no role of bed rest unless and until medically indicated.
Yes.
There are certain medical indications like placenta previa with bleeding or some other things like cervical incompetence wherein you have lot of issues, they have had previous miscarriages. So there are certain medical indications where we tell them rest, we tell them less physical activity and all that. Those are in place as unique cases, but not for everybody.
So unless indicated, there is absolutely no need for having a bed rest,
Yes,
and a woman definitely can carry out the regular
Yes.
course. So madam, yes, when pregnant woman stays at home, not just becoming a doctor, everybody becomes a nutritionist as well. So saying that no, you shouldn't eat papaya, you shouldn't eat sesame seeds, you should avoid this and you should avoid this. To what extent the fact lies in avoiding these two ingredients in a pregnancy
When you
diet?
have to talk about food and myths, there is whole world and there is India. Okay, so when the rest of the world is not impacted with not following those cultures, Why are we into the myths and soap of following certain dietary cultures? Okay, there are certain side effects of raw papaya and causing a miscarriage. There have been certain papers submitted and all that. Maybe the rest of the world does not have raw papaya, so there shouldn't be any problem. But yes, if you have a social habit of having raw papaya, you can definitely stop some papaya or something like that, which is raw. Otherwise, nutritional impact like sesame seeds, which are very rich in calcium, very rich in nutrition, they should not be stopped. One tilka laddu that gives a kind of protein that is very, very useful. So those have to be, practiced, and they have to be, taken it out as a myth. So people don't allow them to have peanuts. They don't allow them to have, like what you've told this, and they don't allow jaggery at times. They don't allow many other healthy stuff. All what you have to do is you have to consult your dietitian and follow what the dietitian says.
Yes.
That's more important at the current situation.
So, as madam, as you were mentioning about the world, and especially that world is India, where color is also very, it is looked at as a this thing, where being fair in complex is looked at as a superior complexion, and because of which all pregnant women are advised to take saffron in their milk. Does really saffron give a fair complexion in the baby, or is this complexion
Saffron,
dependent on the genetics?
Definitely, complexion is dependent solely on the genetic background, and definitely it impacts the social or whatever culture route right now in India that we follow. But saffron is not given for that reason at all. It is
Yes.
only a myth. Saffron gives good sleep. Basically, it is helpful for women who are having sleep issues. So if you take it with milk, it induces good sleep, and quality of sleep is good. That is what I know in terms of saffron. It is not for some color improvement or color change and all that. It's a myth again. But when you have to concentrate on complexion of the child, definitely depends on how you're taking care of your body, how you're taking care of your pregnancy and child. When a lot of people are exposed to sun, they have this sun tan. Neither they have this problem in their previous generations, because they're manual laborers or anything like that, they might get tanned. So if they take care about their health, stay indoors and have a child, the child is not tanned yet, the child is fair. They inculcate this habit saying that I have taken saffron and the child is good. It is not that. Complexion is purely genetic, no changes whatsoever with whatever you take in terms of dietary habits.
So, madam, despite various advancements in science and technology, and all across the world, when eclipse is being looked at as one of the scientific phenomenon, we still hinder all our pregnant women from watching that lunar eclipse or solar eclipse, and with a superstition that it causes deformity in the child. How how genuine is that, looking at eclipse causing deformity in the child?
Eclipse as such has a lot of cultural significance. What significance that eclipse gives is, if it is a solar or a lunar, whatever eclipse, there are some kinds of harsh rays that hit the eyes. That is one reason why, even in the previous days or previous years, for their knowledge, they used to avoid seeing the eclipse. So just to avoid seeing the eclipse, they used to ask everybody to stay indoors. So since pregnant women are overcared, they asked the pregnant women to stay indoors and don't watch outdoors during an eclipse. So that went slowly overturned, and then they started restricting in one room, then they started restricting to the bed, and they started restricting the movement of the pregnant woman also. This is just as a safety measure that has happened. This is absolutely of no significance. And even if an eclipse is going on somewhere outside, look, we are sitting indoors. We have really no impact with whatever that is going outdoors.
Yes.
So you can as well continue your job, you can as well continue your work. It is only a place where the rays are directly hitting the eyes that you should avoid. That was the need when they used to ask them to stay indoor, because every house was having a small space, and even if you go into the kitchen there used to be light, even if you go into the hall there used to be light, even if you sit outside the veranda there used to be light directly hitting you. Nobody ever imagined that you would get into multi-storied buildings where there would be no sunlight inside, where there would be no sun rays coming inside. You would be in larger spaces and offices where you can work, where there is no exposure to sun. Previous generations had small houses where any part of the house you used to have sun exposure. That is why they used to restrict the activity to one area or a place where there is no sunlight, so there is no exposure. Now there is no need of such things, because
Yes.
we are already automatically sun protected and hugely vitamin D deficiency also.
Yes.
So you, even if it is eclipse, you can do your normal course. Don't visualize on a direct one-on-one. That's it.
Madam, as you know, as we're growing generations by generations, the culture or the mindset that everything that should happen at our own pace is increasing, and the same is being extrapolated to pregnancy as well and the delivery as well, where deliveries should happen as per our own schedules,
Yes.
attaching astrology to it or horoscope to it, best times, Rahu Kalam, Muhurtam, and all such things. With
Oh,
this,
you are still stuck there. We are now stuck with weekend deliveries.
yes.
So
With
that
this,
every other
there is a
visitor is
rise.
possible to come and see them. So people want a weekend delivery. It is so absurd and irritating for an obstetrician to time a delivery for a social cause.
God.
Pregnancy is such a time that you should allow either the doctor to take a decision on when to deliver you, depending on your findings, your health, and your positioning and your capabilities, or you should give a time to your body to get into labor. Only these two. Other than these, there are so many social reasons like Muhurtam, like Amavasya coming up, like some bad days like eclipses that are coming up, and nowadays another strange, stupid attitude of people of delivering on a Friday or a Saturday so that they will have visitors on a Saturday, Sunday, and they can go home on a Monday. This is so absurd and creating chaos in our practice that either these people's mental condition is not good or we are not able to keep up to their tantrums. Whatever said and done, obstetrics has its own limitations. If you try to manipulate things beyond a certain degree, instead of getting good results, you will have compromised results and associated complications. Definitely, I would not recommend it going away from the normalcy. Okay, your due date is somewhere in 2 or 3 days, you're good, you're fit, and your findings are very well. If you want to go into delivery today, if an induction of labor gives you good results, you're ready for it, yes, that's good. Or you have a medical reason and you have to deliver in 2-3 days, and you want to vouch for a date, either it is today or tomorrow, that is fine, still fine. Then you have some plan of delivery, with some medical reason that is associated. But no, there are people who are throwing fits, eclampsia, still want to wait till evening because this is not the right time to deliver. Such people and such things are too dangerous on the mother and the child.
I
as
think
such.
this mindset is also increasing on the number of cesarean sections in a female.
Exactly, and people are just not bothered. They have their own mindset. They have their own beliefs. You try to create a new space or new vision, or try to clear out those myths. They clear out you from the field, and they go to somebody else. So they're very fixed in their attitude. They're very fixed in their mind. You have to make a way in between you and them, and you have to make something work out. Otherwise, they land in the same dangerous situation at some other place who need not counsel the way you have counseled.
Yes, and madam, in the recent generations also, what we hear from most of the women who have undergone, delivery, that they're not able to produce sufficient milk to as per the requirements of the baby. So is it something with regards to their latching methods, or if that is so, what kind of training that they actually need?
I'll tell you something. So previously, when a woman delivers, okay, we used to hand over the baby to the mother. A mother and baby were together and together only, and that kind of a eye contact or body bonding, that was very, 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 very good. Now that somebody delivers, either you are in a world where you have to upload the baby pics, or in a world where you have to talk about the baby and delivery to the social media or to your friends and foes, and you have to inform people. Mothers are very reluctant to even hold the child. So it's some sister who goes and gives the latching, the care, the holding technique and all that. So it is not always one on one. If your world is the baby, if the baby contact to your skin and the baby's skin is good, and your nipples are very well prepared from way beyond, before itself, from the day of delivery. Usually I prepare the nipples from 16 to 20 weeks onwards. We slowly pull the nipples outside so that they're not flat. All these things said and done, there should be no reason absolutely for failure of lactation. So a mother's hormones per se flow in such a way that once the baby is in skin contact with the mother, automatically your body responds and the milk output comes and the flow of milk comes. So if you don't have any of these, you are always thinking about folding the child in a blue cloth or a pink cloth or fancy caps, and some photography being happening, and somebody calling you and congratulating you. All these, worldly things that are happening around, and more concentrated on having sleeplessness and more concentrated on others' output from their pregnancies, that I had sleeplessness, I had this issue, I had that issue. All your brain occupied with others' experiences. Where will your body flow its own hormones and experience to the baby? So what we say is, do not carry anybody else's impression onto you. You have your own experience, you have your own bonding, you have your own latching, you have your own chemistry with the child. I have had 3 children, never had any issue with any kind of breastfeeding. I had breastfed my second child for 2.5 years, my first children being twins for 1 whole year. So be it manual expression or an electronic expression or direct feeding, you should never have any issue if your mind is free.
Yes.
That positiveness should be there, that flow of hormones should be there, that basic chemistry between the child and the mother should be there, that skin contact, that positiveness, the kind of feeling that I should feed the baby whatsoever said and done.
It means showing the world to the showing the baby to the world has become more important than
Yes.
making the baby world of the mother.
Yes, and we've observing that kind of a behavior for a very long time, and we can't even tell them no, because now it has become part of their culture.
Yes.
So they still crib on not providing a sister for feeding. Why would some sister need for a mother to child bonding and feeding? Maybe once you can show the position, but every time a sister has to go bend and latch the mother to the child, that is what even we are doing it now, but I don't know where will it take.
Yes, and madam, also that due to the more work pressure from the from the offices, from the companies, that in the recent generation, that what women have been experiencing, they are also not able to feed their child with breast milk, and they are adopting all the formula feeds. So how safe is that? And also that how should especially in setup like India, so how should the work policies support a new mother?
In India, quite a number of companies are giving 6 months of maternity leave. They are thinking into a policy of extending it to 1 year, because it will impact the infant health and the child health over a 1 year. If you can extend the breastfeeding, they have seen beneficial effects. So definitely other than the policies of the government, if you can feed your baby to as much length as possible, it's the best. If otherwise, also 6 months minimum exclusive breast milk is the best policy. That is what is the government now taking care. But then, whatever said and done, whatever work you do, whatever is your schedule, irrespective of anything, if you want to feed the baby yourself, even be it direct or express breast milk, you can do it for any number of months. It is only that you have to be motivated. And the storage conditions of breast milk. Once you express the breast milk, if you're in office, you have to refrigerate it. While you're going home, put it in a flask and take, so that the temperature is maintained. And they can feed the baby whenever you're in your absence. Shifting to formula is never a
Good option.
advice at all. It is not an option. Only in cases where there is no breast milk and there's no option, formula feeding is a second in line option compared to the cow milk or a buffalo milk. Because the formula feed also has, it is guaranteed in sterility, no bacteria if you use safe water, and it has got other nutritional elements also along with the calories and whatever constitution that it has. It has got added vitamin D and vitamin supplementation also, so it is safer. And in terms of availability, is worldwide available. But if you have to consider, breast milk is the best milk, there is no doubt about it. Any mother can give it till the day she wants. It is up to her, and the capability is there. If you have a negative attitude and a negative thinking, it will not trickle or drop, whatever said and done.
Yes.
If you have a positive attitude, you can give up to 3 years or 4 years or whatever age you want.
So, in par with the same lines what you have been mentioning, madam, turning out to the formula feeds is not just because of the office pressures, and we also commonly see that they have been adopting formula feeds not just because of the office pressures, but also notion that they have in the mindset saying that it is very much difficult for a mother to wean off breastfeeding if it is more than 1 year. I think this is also very much.
It is not like that. It is how you start your weaning. Starting of weaning is around 6 to 7 months age group. The baby should be introduced to a variety of foods. What people do is they give one variety of food for a number of days, the baby gets fed up.
Yes.
And stops eating or stops drinking or whatever. If you are able to give a variety of foods to the baby and introduce lot of flavors and changes and different kinds of food to the baby, and make the baby eat other than giving breast milk at 3 to 4 times, so that should not cause any issue on whatsoever even in the future. And it is your own practice that causes problem, and mother baby chemistry is always understood and made on one-on-one basis. We cannot generalize things at all.
Yes. So, as definitely what madam was mentioning about breast milk and its importance. So, yes. And madam, we also see in the earlier days or in the olden days, we see especially where grandparents were available, giving warm oil and turmeric massage to the baby. We generally don't see that in the recent homes or in the recent days, or we see only in homes where grandparents are available. So it is very much important for the baby to get rid of that hyperbilirubinemia and all these things. But we generally don't see in the recent generations. How far is that important, and what is the significance of that massage and exposure to sun?
Exposure to sun is definitely vitamin D exposure. That has been technically very important from the beginning, since we don't have now that we are giving vitamin D supplementation drops for a couple of years after the baby is born. If you have an access to a good sunshine, a good place where you can expose the baby to sunshine, nothing more than that. Just idly keeping the baby in sunshine is of no use as such. So they started massaging the baby and increasing the blood supply to the muscles, increasing the chemistry of the mother and the child, or the person who's doing the massage and the child, and some kind of a physical exercise that in turn gives improved blood circulation, that gives muscle strength, that gives movements, that gives toning. All these things have a lot of significance. Not only that, when you do this kind of exercises and everything, once the bath is done, you feed the baby and the baby sleeps very nicely for a couple of hours. So that is a resting phase where it will give you a growth spurt also. The baby is not restless, the baby is not irritable, the baby is calm, relaxed, that kind of serene sleep baby has. It's very good for the baby's growth and overall well-being of the family, because once the baby goes to sleep, mother will also have some time for herself to recoup from her stress and ailments.
And that also acts as a phototherapy as well.
Yes, it definitely acts.
Yes. So, viewers, this is all about the various facts and myths that generally revolve around the traditional practices and the cultural influences imposed over a woman, especially during pregnancy. So, rather than turning out to be a doctor for yourself, talk to your obstetrician, talk to your doctor, know the facts, act right. Thank you.